Welcome to HardScript.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. It was 2:14 a.m. when she knocked on the bathroom door. Not frantically, not softly, just rhythmically, like she had the right. Like after everything, she still expected me to show up when she snapped her fingers. But I didn't open it. Not this time. That door had stayed open for too long, and all it did was drain me. Her voice came through. Can you help me with the forms? For the refinance? Not how are you? Not can we talk? Not even I'm sorry. Just a favor. From a husband she hadn't touched in 5 months. From a man she made feel like a background actor in his own house. I stayed silent. And in that silence, something shifted. She knocked once more, then gave up. I heard her slippers shuffle back to the bedroom. That sound used to mean comfort. Now it meant nothing. Let me rewind. 2 years ago, I married Jessica because I believed in the version of her I saw when we were alone. The one who laughed at my dumb jokes. Who danced barefoot in our kitchen. Who said intimacy wasn't just physical, it was energy between us. And then she started weaponizing that energy. It started small, subtle. I'd bring up something that bothered me. She'd withdraw for days. I'd reach for her at night. She'd turn, pretend to sleep. Then came the justifications. I'm overwhelmed. It's not the right time. You're always so sensitive. She didn't yell. She didn't cheat. She just stopped seeing me as a man. But she had no issue asking for my help with bills, with errands, with her car payments. I became convenient, functional. She wanted a roommate with benefits, but minus the benefits. At first, I tried harder. Took her on dates. Wrote her notes. Paid off one of her credit cards just to take the pressure off. Nothing changed. If anything, she got colder. Colder, but more entitled. And then tonight happened. That knock wasn't a request, it was a test. To see if I still lived on her leash. I didn't answer it. And in that moment, I realized I was done explaining myself. Done chasing silence. Done trading my dignity for crumbs of approval. When she fell asleep, I packed a bag. Not loud. Not vengeful. Just precise. Laptop, passport, wallet. I didn't leave a note. Just my wedding ring. On the nightstand. Face down. Because if I'm not good enough to touch, I'm not useful enough to stay. And that's the part she never thought would happen. Me leaving without permission. When I shut the front door behind me that night, I didn't slam it. No theatrics. Just the quiet click of a decision that had been aging in my gut for months. I got in the car, started the engine, and stared at the empty passenger seat where she used to sit, legs curled up, scrolling her phone, talking to everyone but me. I didn't cry. That surprised me. For a long time, I thought if I ever left, it would wreck me. But there I was, driving through the suburbs with windows down, radio off, feeling something I hadn't felt in a while, clarity. She texted me the next morning, not asking where I was. Just, did you fill out the chase form? That was her first message after I left. And it told me everything I needed to know. There was no panic, no concern, just another demand. I didn't answer. She followed up with, can you talk later today? Still not, are you okay? Still not, I miss you. I muted the thread. Over the next few days, I stayed at a buddy's apartment downtown. Ryan, my college friend who'd seen me through breakups, layoffs, and one disastrous attempt at starting a brewery, handed me a spare key, no questions asked. You're here for as long as you need, he said, tossing a blanket on the couch. The first 3 days, I didn't leave the building. Just slept, walked laps around the parking garage, scrolled through 5 years of photos and deleted every one of her face. Not out of hate, just necessity. I needed to see what my life looked like without her taking up all the space. Then, on day 4, something strange happened. Jessica posted a selfie. Glossy, filtered, in that same teal sports bra she wore the last night I saw her. Caption, healing. One breath at a time. I laughed out loud. Healing? She hadn't spoken to me in weeks. She hadn't touched me in months. But now that I'd walked away, she wanted to cosplay the victim online? That's when the texts changed tone. First it was, can we talk? Then, please just explain why you're doing this. Then came the one that nearly made me laugh again. You're abandoning your marriage. Abandoning? I thought about every night I'd lain awake next to a woman who treated me like furniture. About every holiday she spent glued to her phone while I tried to spark a conversation. about every favor she asked without offering one thing back. And I thought, no, I didn't abandon my marriage. I just stopped pretending it still existed. By the end of the first week, I had done more than just leave. I had started erasing her from the infrastructure of my life. Bank accounts? Access revoked. Joint cards? Canceled. The house? Still in my name. And I'd already spoken to a lawyer. The locks were next. She hadn't noticed yet. She was still too busy texting, calling from random numbers, trying to get a reaction. But that was over. I'd spent years reacting, jumping at every cold shoulder, apologizing for things I didn't do, bending over backward for a woman who only leaned in when she needed something. That man was dead. The silence was now my weapon. She had used it for years, going days without speaking, weaponizing coldness like a blade. I used to chase her down hallways, beg for answers, ask what I'd done wrong. Now I didn't say a word. She could drown in her own echo. I changed my number 2 weeks in. Only Ryan and my attorney had the new one. And the moment I did it, I felt a new kind of peace. I wasn't running, I was reclaiming. Jessica didn't want a partner. She wanted a provider, a prop, and when I stopped playing that part, the whole illusion fell apart. Friends started reaching out, mutual ones. Her version of the story had already begun circulating. I was cold, impulsive, going through something. One even said I was punishing her emotionally. Sure, let's talk about emotional punishment. Let's talk about the way she used affection like a switch, flicking it off any time she felt the slightest discomfort. Let's talk about the months she spent refusing intimacy, withholding touch like it was a favor to be earned. And the irony? She still expected me to be her safety net, her ATM, her handyman, her silent audience. I was done being an extra in her play. She showed up at the house on the third weekend. Ryan warned me, said she'd messaged him when she couldn't get a hold of me. She looked pissed, desperate. I didn't go home. I waited. By the time she realized I wasn't coming, she left a box of letters on the porch. Old photos, cards I'd written, even a note that said, "We can still fix this. Please come back." But she never mentioned what needed fixing. She never acknowledged what she'd broken. That was always the pattern. Erase her part. Blame me for the wreckage. Not this time. I texted my lawyer the next day. File it. The day my attorney filed the divorce papers, I didn't feel relief. Not at first. What I felt was precision, like setting off a detonation you'd been wiring for months. No emotion. No second guessing. Just execution. I had already moved most of my essentials into a loft I rented on the other side of town. Minimalist. Quiet. Clean slate. No more framed couple photos on the mantle. No soft perfume clinging to pillows. Just silence. And this time, it was mine. Jessica's silence used to suffocate me. Her way of punishing without confrontation. She'd leave rooms mid-sentence. Roll her eyes instead of arguing. Cut intimacy the moment she didn't get her way. It wasn't a marriage. It was an emotional standoff. And still, I stayed. For years. Thinking I could fix what was never meant to be stable. She didn't want peace. She wanted leverage. And now that she lost it, her world was cracking. 3 days after the filing, she called my office. Left a message with my assistant, asking if I could at least meet to talk things through. That phrase again. As if silence, withdrawal, and manipulation could just be talked through over coffee like they weren't a pattern of destruction. I told my assistant, if she calls again, don't patch it through. That same evening, I opened my old Instagram for the first time since the split. She'd been busy. Photos of herself with sad captions, subtle jabs, things like "he changed," and "not all love survives hardship." I didn't engage, didn't like, didn't comment. I just deleted the account entirely. One click. Gone. Just like her version of me. A week later, I walked into our former house to pick up the last box. She wasn't there, but the air felt heavy, like it still remembered the arguments, the absence, the quiet manipulations. I found one last letter she'd left on the kitchen table. It wasn't an apology, it was a plea. She needed help. Financially. Emotionally. She'd lost hours at work. She was overwhelmed, and she didn't know where else to turn. But again, no mention of what she'd taken from me. No mention of the distance she chose. The coldness. The months of rejection. She asked for help, but denied me intimacy for almost a year. So I left the letter exactly where I found it. Didn't touch it. Didn't read it again. On the way out, I locked the door behind me and texted the real estate agent. Listed. 2 weeks after listing the house, we had a buyer. Young couple, newly married, excited about starting fresh. I didn't tell them the walls still whispered arguments, that the bedroom was silent longer than it was warm. Some ruins aren't physical, they're emotional. And I was done living among ashes. Jessica found out the house was up for sale through a friend. She called again, this time from a number I didn't recognize. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail, her voice unsteady, somewhere between anger and panic. You're really selling it without telling me? That's our home. Our. That word again. She used it like a key to a door she welded shut years ago. She'd left long before I did. Emotionally, physically, intimately. The house wasn't a home. It was a museum of indifference. By now, mutual friends were divided. Half bought her version, the victim wife left behind. The other half said nothing, probably unsure, probably watching how I'd play it. But I didn't play. I didn't explain. I let the silence speak. The same silence she used as a weapon, now it was mine. One night, I got a message from her sister. We hadn't spoken much during the marriage. But this time, she didn't defend Jessica. She's falling apart, the message read. She doesn't understand what she did wrong. That last line stuck with me. Not because it surprised me, but because it confirmed everything. She genuinely didn't see it. The slow starvation of affection, the emotional detachment, the selective connection, only reaching out when she needed help, never offering closeness when I did. Marriage wasn't a one-way highway, but she'd driven it like it was, and now she was shocked I exited without waving. In the new apartment, I changed everything. New furniture, new routines. I started boxing again, something I gave up during year 3 of our marriage, when she said it took too much of my time. Now I hit harder, slept deeper, thought sharper. I wasn't healing. I was evolving. One night, I looked through old emails, something I hadn't done in months. Buried deep in a thread, I found one from her, dated 6 months before the divorce. Cold, businesslike, asking for help with a bill, ending with, thanks, appreciate it. No love, no warmth, just transaction. That was it. That was our dynamic, frozen in pixels. Help me. Fix this. Be useful. But don't need me. Don't touch me. Don't expect intimacy. I closed the laptop, sat back, and realized there was no going back. Not because I hated her, but because I didn't recognize her anymore. Or maybe, for the first time, I finally did. It was around the time the house officially sold that I stopped hearing from her. No calls, no voicemails, no mutuals nudging me with updates or guilt-ridden messages. Just quiet. At first, I braced for impact. Jessica never accepted silence. She fought it, manipulated it, used it. So when she finally fell into it herself, I expected a storm to follow. But days passed, then weeks, and then came the email. Not to my inbox. She didn't have my new one, but to Ryan. She wrote him a long message, asking if I was okay, if I was seeing someone, if I still hated her. Her words felt fragmented, like she was writing in a panic and editing as she went. I miss who we were, she wrote. I didn't mean for it to fall apart. But she did. She didn't realize it at the time, but you don't burn something down and then complain about the ashes. You don't freeze someone out for months, then demand warmth. What caught me off guard wasn't the email. It was what Ryan told me after. She looks different, man, he said. Not in a good way. Like she's wearing regret. Regret doesn't age you, it reveals you. Stripped of performance, she had nothing left to control. The narrative crumbled. The audience left. And now she was standing in the wreckage, alone. I didn't reply to the email. I didn't want her to think the silence was bait for reconciliation. It wasn't. It was a conclusion. The kind that doesn't come with closure or fireworks. Just a door quietly shutting, and the sound of footsteps walking away, for good. One evening, I stopped by the gym after hours. The place was empty, lights humming overhead. I wrapped my hands, got in the ring, and started moving. My coach used to say, you don't hit harder when you're angry. You hit cleaner when you're clear. And I was clear, clearer than I'd ever been. That same night, I saw a post from one of her friends, one of those passive-aggressive ones meant to land like a missile. Some men are too weak to face real intimacy. I didn't screenshot it, didn't respond, didn't feel anything. That was the difference between now and then. I used to chase closure, beg for truth, demand to be seen. Now, I let people say what they need to sleep at night, because I was already sleeping fine. She wanted someone to fix her, fund her, follow her. But I was done being useful in silence, while dying in the dark. My absence wasn't punishment. It was protection. From now on, I wasn't her answer. I was just a man who stopped showing up where he wasn't respected. There's a moment, after enough distance, when you finally see it all clearly. Not just what they did, but what you allowed. That moment hit me on a random Sunday morning, pouring coffee in silence, looking out my window at the city slowly waking up. I wasn't thinking of Jessica. I was thinking of who I used to be when I was with her, and how far I'd drifted from that man. He tolerated too much, explained himself too often, kept reaching for someone who only offered their back. That version of me died quietly, not with a scream, but with a whisper, right around the time I realized she wasn't coming back because she'd never really been there. I started noticing changes in the mirror. My shoulders had filled out. My jaw looked tighter, eyes sharper, not just physically. My presence was different, less apologetic, more anchored. People around me noticed too. One of my coworkers, Alan, pulled me aside during lunch. "You've been different lately. Not just happier, calmer, like someone who finally dropped the weight." He didn't know half of it, but it wasn't just the physical. My mind had shifted. My boundaries hardened. I no longer entertained half efforts or shallow conversations. I wasn't bitter. I was focused. I realized how often we confuse access for connection. Jessica had access to me for years, but we weren't connected. She knew how to reach me, but never how to understand me. And now, no one had that access without earning it. I ran into her friend Liz at a grocery store. She gave me the kind of tight-lipped smile that says, "I know everything, but I won't say it." Still, she couldn't help herself. "Jessica's not doing great," she offered. "She says you just disappeared." I nodded. That's all I did. Because I had nothing else to offer. No story to correct. No blame to assign. I simply wasn't there anymore. Disappearing isn't always about running away. Sometimes it's about no longer being available for people who used you when it was convenient. She called again that night. I let it ring. Then I blocked the number. It wasn't out of spite. It was out of necessity. Because some people only reach out when they feel you slipping through their fingers. Not because they love you, but because they hate losing control. I wasn't hers to control anymore. That night, I made a quiet vow. From now on, I would only move toward what moved with me, not what watched me drown in silence. And I slept like I hadn't in years. The fall wasn't sudden. It was slow, painful, and, most of all, visible. Jessica's world didn't shatter overnight. It cracked in quiet places until the collapse became impossible to hide. And by the time anyone noticed, there was nothing left for her to cover it with. The first sign came through social media. Her page shifted. The carefully curated happiness was gone. No more brunch selfies, no us, pictures with Matt. Just vague quotes and late-night reposts that read like coded cries for help. The kind that said, "I need attention, but not from just anyone." Then came the whispers. Ryan texted me one afternoon, screenshotting a comment thread from one of her posts. Matt was gone. Not just off her grid, but from her life. Someone had written, "Guess you finally ran out of people to lie to." She replied, "At least I'm not pretending to be okay while dying inside." I didn't laugh. I didn't feel victorious. I felt nothing. That was the most surprising part. The absence of any thrill. I wasn't watching her fall to enjoy it. I was watching to remind myself why I never wanted to climb back in. I heard through a mutual friend she'd been passed over for a job she was banking on. Apparently, references weren't kind. Her attitude at the last office left a trail she couldn't erase. And the new crowd? They weren't impressed by charm alone. When life stops being curated, the real you shows up, and not everyone survives that unveiling. She reached out again, this time from a new number. "Hey, just wondering if you have a minute to talk. No pressure." I didn't respond. That same night, I went out with a few friends. At dinner, someone brought up an old memory from my time with Jessica. I expected the usual sting, but it didn't come. Instead, I just nodded and said, "Feels like a different life." Because it was. There's something profound about being forgotten by someone who thought you'd chase them forever. But there's something even more powerful in realizing you've forgotten them first. Jessica was unraveling, but I wasn't the one holding the thread. She did that to herself, one small betrayal at a time. She told everyone I ghosted her. Let them believe I was cold, heartless, avoidant. I let her, because defending myself to people committed to misunderstanding me felt like giving CPR to a corpse. Let them grieve their version of the story. I was living mine, and in mine, the silence wasn't punishment. It was a boundary. It was inevitable. She'd try one last time. They always do, not because they want you back, but because they want the version of themselves they were when you loved them. That reflection, that certainty, that borrowed warmth. Jessica was no different. It happened on a rainy Tuesday. I just stepped out of the gym when I saw her waiting near my car. Hair soaked, mascara blurred, jacket barely hanging onto her shoulders like she wasn't even trying to stay warm anymore. Just trying to be seen. She didn't speak right away. Just looked at me with this familiar desperation, the one that says, "I messed up, but can we pretend I didn't?" I didn't ask her what she was doing there. I didn't ask how she found me. I didn't ask anything. She said quietly, "I just want to talk." That sentence used to be a trapdoor, leading to guilt, manipulation, circular logic. But now, it was just static in the background of a frequency I no longer tuned into. I nodded once. She took it as an invitation. It wasn't. She started explaining. Rambling, really. About how things got complicated. About Matt being a mistake. About how she never stopped loving me. How what we had was real, but she got scared. About how she thought I'd always be around. A constant. That last part, that's where she revealed everything. The entitlement beneath the regret. The belief that my loyalty was her inheritance. But I didn't interrupt. I let her talk. Let her pour it all out into the silence, hoping it would soak into something that could still feel for her. It didn't. When she finished, she looked up, expecting something. A soft word. A bitter laugh. A crack in my armor. She didn't get any of it. All I said was, "You already said goodbye. You just didn't hear it." Then I stepped past her, got in my car, and drove off without looking back. That was the real end. No doors slamming. No final kiss. No dramatic music. Just absence. Complete and surgical. She lost access to me the moment she treated me like a placeholder. Now, she stood in the rain, soaked not from weather but from the storm she created, and thought she could escape. There's a special kind of silence that follows the last word. Not the one spoken, but the one lived. I didn't leave to teach her a lesson, but she learned one anyway. I thought the end would feel heavier, like a door slamming shut or a rope snapping. But when it finally arrived, it was just quiet. No grand confrontation. No desperate pleas echoing through the hallway. Just air. Still and unbothered. I'd packed light. I wasn't running. I'd already done that months ago. This was just the formal step, the physical removal of my presence from a place that no longer recognized me. Her apartment had once smelled like vanilla and books. Now it just smelled like worn-out perfume and yesterday's lies. She wasn't home when I left the keys on the counter. I didn't need her to be. I didn't need a final word or another glance at the version of her I used to chase. I didn't take anything that wasn't mine. I didn't leave a note. No explanations. No, you deserve better. Nonsense. Just silence. It wasn't punishment. It was clarity. I stopped by my old place on the way out of town. The one I had before Jessica, before the shared furniture and blended routines. It was being renovated now. New owners. Fresh paint. It looked nothing like the space I once called home. But standing there, I realized something. Neither did I. The man who used to live there believed in compromise. In second chances. In fixing what someone else broke. He bled for the people he loved, even when they didn't notice. But that man died quietly, somewhere between the moment she called me convenient and the first time she lied to my face without blinking. The man who stood there now? He doesn't explain. He doesn't beg. He doesn't flinch. Jessica tried to reach out once more. A message. I miss us. But there was no us left to miss. Just a chapter she wished she hadn't closed. A mirror that no longer reflected her best angle. And I didn't reply, because she didn't need my words. She needed my absence. The last thing I did before leaving the city was change my number. Deleted the backup. Removed every trace of her from my devices. Burned the digital breadcrumbs. They say love ends with fire or ice. Mine ended with neither. Just a locked phone. A quiet exit. And a man who finally remembered who he was before her. You wanted silence, Jessica. Now it's all you have. Drop it in the comments. Hit subscribe. This is where we talk about what doesn't get forgiven.